welcome back. Now, you guys might remember I did a video months and months and months ago about this incredible facility that produces world-class Arctic char. Now, that is run by a good friend of mine, Peter David Waldner. He's only about 10 minutes from my place. Well, just last weekend, I happened to be back over there. We were chatting, we were doing all sorts of stuff, had the cameras rolling and everything, and there were some things that were very different than before. So we sat down and we talked a lot about that, and then that evening we were driving together in the truck. So I'm going to let David give you guys the skinny about what's happening at the Ridgeland Aqua Farms. So massive changes coming down the road, and it's always going to be for the better. So let's get to it. All right, Peter. Haven't seen the facility in a while. It's still looking pretty good. You're still churning out some amazing fish. But I understand you guys are going through some changes.
Yes, we are going to be changing. We will be changing or moving away from char after about 17 years of growing these fish. And there's been some issues with the char. They haven't been meeting our expectations lately. And we will be moving from char to steelhead trout. Hopefully within a year's time, we will start harvesting steelhead trout from our facility.
Like, people need to really appreciate, because like you and me have talked before, the very first time I came and saw your facility in the old one, you talked about it took from the time of getting an egg to a fry to production size was 3 years. And then when you set up this incredibly new state-of-the-art facility, you could cut an entire year off your production in that facility. Now, if you're going to switch over to trout, I understand that's even going to shorten it again?
Yes, well, yeah, char, and it takes, in the old barn we used to at least need 3 years to get them up to market size. And in the old barn we did push them down to about only 2 years because our water was quite a bit warmer. And with trout, you should be able to get them out in under 2 years, in about 18 months.
Are we talking a fish that's going to be roughly the same sort of size?
It's actually going to be a bit bigger. We're having a target weight of about 2 kgs.
Oh, okay. So that'll probably also, I guess trout would probably give you a much bigger spectrum of like an audience for your product.
We think so because, you know, a lot of people don't really know what char is. Even after us trying to educate people for 17 years what char is, you still come across people that have no idea what a char is.
But you guys did char because one, it was unique to Manitoba and Canada, northern Canada, and we are in Canada, so it was a nice nod to that. But it also, you were pretty much the only game in town, not just locally, but even on a national level. You were one of the very few. You had very few competitors producing that type of a product.
Correct, which was a good thing for us. There's only 3 char farms across Canada.
Now, with going away from char and going into trout, is maintenance cheaper, or is maintenance pretty much going to be the same?
Maintenance will still be the same.
Okay.
But trout, everybody tells me trout are a bit easier to raise than char. Char can be a bit touchy, finicky at times.
When you're doing it on a production scale, there's no room for error.
Nope, there's no room. Well, the new barn, there is room for error because if you do make a mistake, you have other machines come on, kick in that will take care of your error for a bit. But yeah, getting back to temperature, char, you don't want it to go over 12 Celsius with char. Anything over that, they start getting sluggish and they're not happy.
Yeah.
Whereas trout, they don't mind it all the way up to 18 Celsius, which is actually an optimal temperature for them to grow.
And you mentioned when we were touring around, you get every notification for anything pertaining to the entire facility, all the alarms, all the monitors, everything that controls every aspect of that building, you can control from your phone.
That is correct. Every single issue that happens, or even a small alarm, I will get a text message or a phone call. It depends what type of alarm it is, and I will either get on my phone and check the cameras to see if it's a false alarm or if it's a real alarm, and depends what it is. You might have to go check it out, or sometimes it's just a false alarm.
The reason for the switch from char to trout?
The reason we're switching is just the cost of raising a char versus a trout. This trout's quite a bit lower. And nowadays, with everything, inflation and everything going up the way it is, the feed cost is going crazy. And feed conversion with trout is a lot better than it is with char, so that's one of the reasons. Second reason is Trout's been in the industry a lot longer. It's actually domesticated. It grows a lot more uniform, grows a lot better. Whereas char, they just all different sizes. And also with char, you know, they start to sexually mature at a certain age and they'll stop growing and putting all their energy into producing eggs. And the males will start producing milk and all that. So that's another loss with cost because they're still eating your feed, but they're really not growing because they're putting all their energy to eggs.
Right.
And then you get a lot of grade B fillets when those fish start to sexually mature because they're putting all their color from their meat onto the eggs. So you're cutting this fish open and it's got this pale colored flesh where it should be nice and orange.
Which is the signature that most people in the restaurants that you're selling your product to, they're expecting that.
Yes, they don't just expect that, they want that. And if they don't get it, they're not going to buy your product.
Right.
So that's the reasons we are switching from char to trout.
And trout, you know, everybody, like you said earlier, everybody knows what trout is. Char, you got a very limited amount of restaurants that are going to take on something like that. It's more specialty.
Correct. Yeah. It's a lot more special. It's a lot more white tablecloth restaurants. Yeah. And there's really not that many white tablecloth restaurants in Manitoba, so you got to ship it all the way to Alberta and Vancouver, and well, there's freight. So yeah, you're looking at an extra cost.
Freight's at an all-time high again, too.
Absolutely, yeah. It is.
Yeah. You had mentioned that, you know, we've stopped production on the char. The char that are in the facility that are already almost to size, you're going to take them right through till finish. But as we've shown in the video, a lot of the grow out vaults or whatever we call them, you know, they're all empty awaiting the next stage. And then we even saw one of them that had all those steelhead trout in it already up to like 6-7 inches in size. And then we went into the, what do you call it, hatchery room?
I call it the egg room.
And in the egg room, you showed us all those racks, and every single tray was filled with 10,000 freshly hatched.
They're alvins.
And they are alvins until they become steelhead trout?
No, they're alvins until they start swimming up and first feeding. Then you start to call them fry.
Oh, okay.
So I guess in the aquarium world, we'd call them wigglers.
Oh, okay.
The aquaculture world, they call them alvins. And then once they start free swimming and all that, they call them fry. Yeah, the egg room was full when you were here with about 50,000 trout eggs that had just hatched a few days earlier. They'll be going into those troughs, and from those troughs, once they reach a certain size, they get too crowded, we'll be moving them to the ER into those 1,200-gallon tanks.
Well, thank you, Peter. This place is looking impressive. I always love coming and checking it out. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.